Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video, but we are going to talk about video games again. We're going to talk about DEI standards again in video games because that seems to be the biggest talking point. Not the games themselves. It's always the controversy, the politics around video games that tend to suck up all the discussion time about the game industry right now. That and AAA studios folding and corrupt journalists and community managers and all this stuff. It's all interconnected, guys. It's all interconnected. This story dropped on Bounding in the Comics yesterday. Spencer Bakuli put it up, and I missed this. Apparently, it's been floating around for a while now, but Unreal Engine's coding standards are requiring video game studios to use more inclusive language in their programming and documentation. So it's not just like make sure we have inclusive characters on screen. Now even the wording has to be inclusive, and we're going to talk about it because this is something that's come up a lot in tech lately, and I'm just going to assume, without having read this article yet, they're talking about like whitelist and blacklist and all of that because it makes people feel bad. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how inclusive and diverse your game is. If it doesn't make money, the studio gets shut down. And I think the overcorrection will correct itself here pretty soon. Again, we are seeing a lot of AAA studios fold. We did a video yesterday talking about Square Enix, and it was very interesting. A former Square Enix executive, an employee, said that how Square determines whether or not a video game is successful is if we took that money and we put it in the stock market, would we have made more money? That's literally it. Like if we take $100 million and spend on a game, if we put that money in the stock market for 5 years instead of releasing that AAA title, would we have made more money? And if the answer is no, then it was a huge mistake and it did not perform as well as expected. And I think that a lot of this enforced diversity and inclusion stuff that's going on is actually killing creativity and killing game development because they're spending all their time worrying about this stuff, right? They're spending all their time worrying about the minor details, not looking at the big picture. Will people buy the game? At the end of the day, that's all that matters. Will people buy the game? So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Check out the Shadowbinders reprint drive on Indiegogo. You have another chance to pick up or secure a copy of Shadowbinders Volume 3. We're also going to try to reprint books 1 and 2. They are completely out of print. You guys have been awesome. We've actually blown through 2 reprintings in the last year or two of this book. Maybe I should just do more. See, I'm afraid to print too many. I'm afraid to have like 20,000 of these books sitting around because what if they don't sell? But, we print several thousand at a time and they always sell out, between the crowdfunders and the website. So apparently you guys like them, and I really appreciate that. We definitely appreciate it. So it has incentivized us to bring the series back. It was a webcomic, and now we're just going to do it as a series of graphic novels going forward. These are hardcover. Check it out on Indiegogo because people were asking for Indiegogo, so that's why we did it. All right, let's go out to Bounding in the Comics. Unreal Engine coding standards require video game studios to use inclusive language in programming and documentation. Yeah, so it's like, you can't even the language in the freaking documentation has to be DEI approved. They said that first added to the engine's official coding standards in April of 2022, the tool's 5th version, and recently brought to light courtesy of its April 2024 update. So this has been around for a while, guys. I thought it was kind of weird because nobody's talking about it. Like everybody's looking at the surface. They're all looking at, oh, hey, these video games seem to be very diverse and inclusive, and that's all the media is talking about. And then you peel a layer back, and you're like, oh, there are these consulting firms like Sweet Baby Inc. involved in all these video games. That's probably why they're all going down this path. And then you peel that layer back, and you're like, oh, the very documentation of the tools they're using to build the video games. are use, just overcorrecting. Like this is like Wizards of the Coast. Like certain terms you cannot use because they're afraid it's going to be offensive to somebody. And it's usually a sensitivity reader. And I can almost guarantee you there's a sensitivity reader behind this. Go through this documentation. Tell us if anything in this documentation is offensive. And of course, to keep their jobs, they're going to find things to be offended about. Sensitivity readers are people who are offended for a living. So yes, they're going to go through and they're going to find things to be offended about, because if you went through and said, no, everything looks fine, everything's copacetic, it's all good, they don't have a job anymore, do they? Because that's it. You have to have a problem, right? I mean, you can't be an exterminator if you don't have cockroaches and mice. So if you run out of cockroaches and mice, I guess you just gotta you bring some in, let them breed so you can exterminate them. You know what I'm saying? Like in this case, the cockroaches and the mice are the sensitivity readers and the DEI consultants and the people that have actually wormed their way into the industry, and now they control it from the top down. Actually, I would say it's more I think the tail is wagging the dog. I think the underlings are telling the suits that this is what people want via community managers and journalists, but this is not actually what people want. At the end of the day, you look at the numbers. What games are selling? What are people actually angry about? And it's going to be like Square. We're going to get down to it where it's going to be like Square Enix, and they're going to be like, yeah, we spent $100-200 million on the game and we didn't get a return on our investment, so we're not going to listen to you anymore. That's all it's going to take. And I think we're at that point. It just takes years for things to course correct. Anyway, as of April 2024, this new inclusive word choice clause sees Epic Games encourage, a curious word given that they consider the following of said standards to be mandatory, users to use respectful, inclusive, and professional language when writing or documenting a piece of code. We're not even talking about the end product. We're just talking about the code and the documentation. Word choice applies when you name classes, functions, data structures, types, variables, files, and folders, and plugins, says Epic Games. It applies when you write snippets of user-facing text for the UI, error messages, and notifications. It also applies when writing about code, such as in comments and change list descriptions. Again, this is stuff that end users are not going to see. And they're like, oh, well, some of our programmers might get offended by this language. Bitch, I can almost guarantee you that the people doing the actual programming, the people doing the actual work, aren't offended by the DEI shit. They're not even thinking about the DEI shit. They're actually rolling their eyes at the DEI shit. They just want to get it done. I worked for a software company for a number of years. Programmers don't give a shit about this thing. The people that give a shit about this thing are the community managers and the social media people and the interns and all the people that take the 3-hour lunches, not the people that actually make the product. They don't give a shit about any of this stuff. But I guarantee you there are some offended, non-essential workers that are going to come across this documentation and be like, I find this offensive. Anyway, here we go. To this end, Epic Games then provided guidance as to what words devs should and shouldn't use in their writing. Do not use metaphors or similes that reinforce stereotypes. Examples include contrast, black and white, or black. There it is, blacklist or whitelist. Do not use words that refer to historical trauma or lived experiences of discrimination. It includes slave, master, and nuke. So you can't have like slave drive or anything like that. You can't say, hey, we nuked this because it didn't work very. Oh my God. Turning to gender-related language, Epic Games advises devs to refer to hypothetical people as they, them, and their, included even in the singular, and anything that's not a person as it and its. Well, didn't we learn from that god-awful Netflix show that sometimes if you call a mech it actually wants to be called she, her? Didn't we learn? For example, a module, plugin, function, client, server, or any other software or hardware component is it. Further, users are asked to not assign a gender to anything that doesn't have one or use collective nouns like guys that assume gender. What the fuck? Now, to be fair, my wife told me that when she was teaching and she was a student teacher, that they actually corrected her on that like years ago. That was in academia, right? In academia. But they actually did. They were like, yeah, don't use guys because we have girls. And it's like, come on. Like nobody, that's like calling somebody dude. You know, dude is just dude. It can be a male or female dude. It could be a non-binary dude. It's like, I'm not, whatever. Also take care to avoid colloquial phrases like that contain arbitrary genders, like a poor man's ex. No, it's got to be a poor man's ex. Yeah, that's called blue sky. Fuck this. I'd be like, I can guarantee you the devs are rolling their eyes, and this is all for the benefit of the people that take 3-hour lunches and don't do any damn work. Regarding slang, the standards call on devs to remember that your words are being read by a global audience and they may not share the same idioms and attitudes. That actually I would somewhat agree with. They might also not understand the same cultural references, thus aim to avoid slang and colloquialisms. Even if you think they're funny or harmless, particularly these may be hard to understand for people whose first language is not English. Yes, Epic owned largely by a Chinese company, so some of the jokes might go over their heads. Yeah, never criticize the CCP, by the way. Don't use profanity. Don't say we're going to fucking nuke this server or anything like that. Continuing the standards next, ask Unreal Engine users to be conscious of their overloaded words. Many terms we use for their technical meanings also have other meanings outside of technology. Oh, for fuck's sake. Examples include abort, execute, or native. Are we gonna change .exe now? Are we gonna change it? Because that's offensive. .them. We're gonna run .them programs or some shit. When you use words like these, always be precise and examine the context. This was obviously written by somebody who's never written a line of code in their whole fucking lives. They don't even. This person, whoever wrote this, probably could barely turn on a computer. This is a sensitivity reader at work, guys. This is what they do. They make problems where there are no problems so they can get paid to solve the non-existent problems. And it's such a waste of corporate money. These corporations, they're starting to wise up now because these people infiltrated at the lower levels and they kind of work their way up. They're starting to wise up. You don't need sensitivity readers. You don't need sensitivity readers. You definitely don't need groups of people taking 3-hour lunches at your software company. You know, they're listening to these people that would be better off, again, being, volunteer message board moderator than them working professionally in any capacity, in any industry outside of retail. And these are the people you're listening to. And you're losing hundreds of millions of dollars listening to these people. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're smarter than this. You people are smarter than this, right? Just shut them down. Shut them down. This is why it's not good for these AAA studios to be bloated, because they have a lot of bloat. And Epic, remember, they started laying a lot of people off. They've been laying a lot of people off. And I guarantee you, people like this, the people that are offended by this language, they were some of the first ones to go. They will have found another reason to lay them off. But I guarantee you, they were some of the first ones to go. Said terminology includes the terms blacklist, whitelist, trust list, safe list, prefer list, approve list. Oh yeah, use that instead. Safe list, prefer list, approve list, permission list instead of whitelist. Master, slave. So slave, you have to replace with secondary, replica, agent, follower, worker, cluster node, locked, linked, and synchronized. Oh, fuck off. Everybody knows what the terminology means. This has been around since the beginning. Ultimately, Epic Games closes out the text of this new standard by assuring the public that they are actively working to bring our code in line with the principles laid out. But fuck off. Seriously, any developer worth their salt is going to tell you that this is bullshit because these are perfectly acceptable terms. They've been used forever. Everybody knows what they mean, including black folks who are not offended at all by the terminology because they've been working in tech and they know what the fuck is being talked about. Whoever came up with this document doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. Here are some of the reactions on Twitter. Again, this is old. This has been out there for like 2 years, a year or two. Nobody has paid attention to it though. Isn't it sneaky? Like Sweet Baby Inc. Nobody knew that Sweet Baby Inc. for the last 5 or 6 years was quietly destroying AAA gaming, by applying their sensitivity guidelines, DEI guidelines to half of the damn AAA titles out there. Because it takes so long to make these games, right? So these people were hired years ago to come in and give their 2 cents. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to take years for AAA gaming to course correct. I don't think there's going to be a AAA gaming industry. Not like there is now. Because again, look at Square Enix. Square Enix flat out said, if we would be better off just putting our money in the stock market than making a AAA title, we're not going to greenlight that title. And it's gotten to the place with Final Fantasy games where they're so damn expensive. You do a Final Fantasy remake, and you could have done a Final Fantasy VII remake years ago on the PS3. That's what people thought they were going to do. And it could have been a 1-to-1 remake and with improved graphics and voice acting, and people would have been happy with it. And that's all you had to do, right? You just brought up to kind of the standard of like Final Fantasy X. I think people would have been reasonably happy with that. But no. We got to turn it into this like freaking 3-part, 4-part epic because, Final Fantasy VII is the most bankable Final Fantasy. But it was. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think maybe you're 10, 15 years too late to the party. But so they're not going to make games like that. Go back to making like PS2 style Final Fantasy games. You can do them on relatively small budget, but the graphics are competent enough, and it's really all about the gameplay. People are still playing Final Fantasy 14 for God's sake. So Degenerate J here says, I like a lot of what Epic has done with Fortnite, but what the fuck is going on here? This comes off like an April Fool's joke or a South Park bit. Micah Curtis says, hey, Unreal Engine, who exactly does this help? I can't use terms like blacklist or whitelist, even though neither is a racial term. I can't use slave or master, even though in coding they have different definitions. What the hell? This person says a totalitarian state wouldn't go this far. Absolutely fucking absurd. Time to learn. Godot and GD script instead of having to deal with this insanity. Unreal Engine coding standards require video game studios to use inclusive language. Yeah, this is just going to push people away. I mean, Unity has already pushed people away, right? Because the pricing model is batshit. And now the language in Unreal is batshit. Yeah, here it is right here. This person says the Unreal Engine coding standards was written by a gender studies multicolor hair idiot. Exactly. These people do not actually make anything. They just come into your business and they tell you what they think is wrong with your business, filtering it through their gender studies, their recently acquired gender studies degree from Berkeley or whatever. And you're going to let them tell you how to spend hundreds of millions of dollars? What the fuck is wrong with you? I would say whatever CEO is in charge should get fired. Like if you allowed this to happen on your watch, you need to go. You burnt hundreds of millions of dollars by letting these people into your company and destroying your business. I mean, I've seen profitable studios almost overnight. I mean, by overnight, I mean like 5 or 6 years, but they've just gone. I mean, again, look at Warner Brothers. Look at Rocksteady. They went from making the Arkham games, which were some of the most highly regarded games out there, like a high watermark for comic book games. They went from that to Suicide Squad, and all it took was listening to people like this. And you lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And they flat out said it, that their last earnings call. They said, we lost a bunch of money on Suicide Squad. There's only 400, 500 people playing that game at a time. Pal World, which isn't being talked about as much as it was a couple of months ago, there's usually 14, 15,000 people playing Pal World. Yes, you fucking failed. It's just, God, what a disaster. Yeah, so this is crazy. Yeah, everybody's talking about this. A lot of programmers are talking about it. I thought it was a joke. No, this is a real text in your coding standards. Yeah. Why do you keep employing people that come up with this shit, and why do you listen to them? Yes, your xenophobia is showing for every culture that has gendered language like Spanish, French, and German. I think it's bullshit. Godspell says, this is the most stupid doc I've ever read. Bro, Woken Game Engine, you fucking serious? Yeah, pretty much. Not even the games themselves, but the documentation. There it is, guys. This This is ridiculous. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is the same mentality of people that throw a bunch of dirt on a piece of cardboard and they expect a garden to grow, right? You don't understand how the shit actually works, but you want to come in and tell people how they should be doing their jobs. And you need to go. We need experienced people who aren't fucking around with this shit to come in and fix the industry. And that means getting rid of a lot of people. And that's why. You want to know why they're laying off? Because the money's not there? Yeah, but they're also using that as an excuse. They're laying people like this off. They're getting rid of them. They're finding it out. They know. I think a lot of these companies know. They're like, oh my God, we have made a massive mistake. We've got about a third to half of our staff are made up of gender studies people that are just, they're not bringing anything to the job. It's time for them to go. Let's just say macroeconomic headwinds and get them the fuck out of here so we can focus on making money. And that's what they're doing. So we'll see where the industry is in 5 or 10 years. But that's what's going on in my opinion. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe. We'll talk later.